Hello and welcome to the lecture on passing input parameters to functions. So we'll understand how to pass input parameters. So if you open up the functions folder example 2, the logical flow is basically to learn how to pass parameters to function and even validate them. So part of this, we will create this PHP file. So let's do this example. So for this, we have to even validate the input parameters. So for that, we will say declare strict types is equal to 1. Okay, you're gonna see why I am doing this. One way of defining declare strict types is equal to 1 is if some parameter saying okay pass integers, then if you're passing string, then it will fail. Okay, it's going to validate all the data types and it won't do automatic conversions. It's going to stop you doing automatic conversions. Okay, so for this we are telling to interpreter that please check all those mismatch variable types. Okay, so let's define a function this time. We'll say print odd numbers. It's not much about how to define even and odd numbers, but try to focus on how to define a function, how to pass parameters, and try to understand the concept. We will pass two parameters. One, we will mention it as int. All right, this time we will specify it has to be integers, and we will say okay, I want to skip some numbers. Okay, which means if you have this number, please skip it. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna write the same loop. So if $index is equal to $skip number, then we're going to continue. We're going to skip the checking of that number. So index modulus 2 not equal to 0, that will denote as an odd number, and we're going to print out the odd number. Okay, so let's call this method. Okay, so if you pass 20 comma 3, let's say we are passing one integer and one string. Because we have said we want strict types, so before that we are not going to check the data type. So we're going to say index with skip number. We are not checking with integer to string, so we'll just check between the value of that variables. Okay, so let's run that. The number 3 has been skipped, but there is no problem in printing the odd numbers. Okay, because this is an integer and we have set it as an int, so it's perfectly matched. For this we haven't told what is the data type, so it's perfectly okay for PHP. If you do the same thing and if you call this with 20, then you will have an error. Okay, the error is coming up because you have said declare strict types, and that's why it's unable to accept as a string when you say as an integer. Okay, and what happens when you do this? Okay, so let's try out that. So even that is an error because you said you have two parameters, but you have passed only one parameter. That's also a strict type. Okay, so understand how the strict types work. That is the first thing we have learned here, how to declare strict types. So you understand when you don't want to do an automatic conversion and you want to put some strict rules on your program, then you declare it as strict types as 1. Then PHP will stop you to do automatic conversions and expect you to pass some correct values to your methods. So one thing we learned here, how to pass a parameters. You can specify the data type or you can skip those data type, but if you don't have the declare strict types, then you can pass strings or you can pass numbers. It's just going to accept when you don't mention any data type. Okay, so I hope it's a very simple example how to pass an input parameter to a function. just define the input parameters and just pass over. And when you have a strict types and when you didn't pass all the input parameters, that will create an error. Well, I hope that's a very simple example on how to pass parameters to a function, and that's all on this lecture on passing input parameters, and I'll see you in the next one.